day, whatever that means. Some of us are still working. It's an interesting daf. I'll put it that way. We are at the bottom of daf 60 Amud Bet, of Samach Amud Bet. Today is number 61, but we are all the way down near the bottom. In 4 lines from the bottom, there's 2 dots, and we're going to be on a little bit of a tangent. And this is always tricky, to understand when the Gemara gives health, and it's not so much health, right? So obviously, in times before modern medicine, let's put it that way, for William Osler, maybe, there was a big conflation between health and superstition and attitudes, I would say, more, meaning a lot of things were viewed as, they were aware of many health things. They had lives, right? And they were sophisticated. But there was a lot of intentional things that sort of were not necessarily thought to fit together the way we think of them today. And one of those expressed today. So yesterday's Gemara talked about if a woman is nursing, right, she's not allowed to eat certain foods because it'll be bad for the milk, right? And again, obviously they had experience, right? They were very experienced in nursing. They had that ability to know that certain foods seem to be a problem. But like anything, when you don't have a scientific method, right, it's very easy to make the wrong conclusion from things, right? Or to make a mistaken conclusion. Or maybe for your society, it's the right thing. But either way, today we continue and talk about behaviors having to do with intercourse. And says the Gemara today, 4 lines from the bottom, a woman who's mishamshe be'rechaya, woman who has tashmisha mito, as sex, near the rechaya. And the rechaya literally means the mill, right? The grinding stone. Again, not clear if it means on the grinding stone, in the room of the grinding stone. Either way, says the Gemara, Havila b'nei nichfen. She'll have children who shake. Rashi explains it means they have seizures, right? So again, is the connection because the stone is, grinding and the kids are moving? I don't know, but that was thought to be a bad siman. The mishamshe al ara, a woman who sleeps and has intercourse and presumably becomes pregnant while laying on the ground, Havile b'nei shemuti. The children will be long-necked. Again, I don't know exactly what the connection is. The darcha al damma de chamra. There's different girsaot here, right? A woman who sleeps on, we have Ramma in our Gemara, but there's on the side you see damma de chamra, something of a chamar. So if it's damma, it's probably something to do with the blood of a chamar, or some say it's Ramma, it's the dung of a chamar. Either way, if some of the connection between her sleeping in a place and the donkey being there, having they been girdani, she'll have children who are girdani, which means that they're bald. Again, I don't know exactly the connection.
Right.
To achla chardala, now a woman who eats, and this is very connected to eating foods during nursing, right? A woman who's pregnant who eats a lot of mustard seed, havile b'nei zalzalani, she'll have children who are eat a lot. They're very, very hungry, right? They always want some mustard. I don't know. So she'll have children who are eat a lot. The achla tachli, if a woman eats tachli, tachli, I think is some kind of vegetable, cress, as someone said. I don't know what that means exactly. Havile b'nei dolfani, she'll have children who have dolfani, which we translate usually as meaning, Rashi says here, they have a lot of tears, their eyes drip. Adachla monini, a woman who's pregnant, again, it's not so good if this is during pregnancy, before pregnancy, but somewhere in that period, a woman who eats monini, I don't really remember what monini is. Does Rashi say here? Or galalechal dagim ktanim, yeah, little sardines, little sardines. So then, havila b'nei mitzitzi einer, children will have eyes that are blinking a lot. I don't know, they can't keep them open. Dachla gargushta, woman who eats gargushta, which or means soil, yeah. Havile b'nei mechuari, she'll have children who are ugly. Dishatya shichra, a woman who drinks a lot while she's pregnant. Havile b'nei uchmi, she'll have children who are dark. Again, I don't exactly know what dark means in this context. The achla bisra v'shatya chamra, a woman who's pregnant who eats meat and drinks wine. Havile b'nei barye, she'll have very healthy children. So that's the diet that the Gemara wanted a pregnant woman to follow. Dachla bei, if she eats eggs during pregnancy, havile b'nei anani, her children will have big eyes, inani. Dachla kivori, if she eats kivori, which is fish, right? Havile b'nei chinani, her children will have chin, will be very, very pleasant to other people. Dachla karpisa, sorry, if she eats karpisa, celery usually is how we translate karpas, but in the Pesach setting, havile b'nei zivtani, her children will be ziv, they will shine, they'll be beautiful. The achla kuzbarta, if she eats kuzbarta, which we translate as coriander, I don't really know what that. I guess it's a spice. I know
it's cilantro.
Cilantro, okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Havile b'nei bisrani, your children will be. This doesn't not the same as fat. This is they'll be generous. There'll be a lot of basar. They'll be nice. That's a healthy thing. The achla eteroga, and she eats a lot of etrogim during pregnancy. Havile b'nei reichani, your children will smell very good. So they'll have a etrog smell. So again, we obviously don't follow any of these things. And in fact, says the Gemara, Barte de Shvormalka, Achla Ba'ima Etroga, the daughter of the Shvormalka. Shvormalka was like the king and the leader in Bavel. The daughter, the mother, while she was pregnant, ate a lot of etrogim, and this daughter smelled very beautifully. And having maskila the kameyavu b'reish rechani, they would bring her in front of her father at the top of all the spices, meaning she would be like one of the spices because she smelled so nice. Okay, that's a little bit of just behavior of how, if you're interested during pregnancy. Again, Tosfos elsewhere says we should not follow any of this today. These are all, the world changes, behavior changes. This is no longer applicable. Continues the Gemara. Now, 7 lines from the top. Amar Rafuna, right? Let's it says Rafuna. I got to tell you a story. Baraklan Rafuna Bar Chinina. Rafuna Bar Chinina was testing us, right? He was checking to see if we knew our Gemara, if we came to Daf Yomi on time. Let's say he omerik lahani. Remember, our Mishnah said that a woman has a responsibility to nurse her child as part of her responsibility to her husband. Let's say the woman says, "Great, I want to nurse my child." But who omerik shlo lahani? The husband says, "I don't want you to nurse, right? I want to hire a person. I don't want you to. It's too much, or whatever. Whatever reason he doesn't want it. It could be for beauty. It could be any reason. But she wants to do it. He doesn't want her to do it. Shomila, you listen to her and you allow her to do it because Sarah didahi. It's her pain, right? She both pain from physically pain, but also I think emotional pain. She wants to be connected to her child. Now, let's say who omer lahanik, the husband says, "I want you to nurse our baby, right? It's the best nourishment, whatever reason he wants it." He omer shlo lahanik, and she says, "I don't want to do it. I'm willing to hire someone," assuming again she has the money, and or she brought in the money, not to nurse the baby, to hire someone to do it. Mahu says somewhere, well, it depends. This was the question that Rafuna Bar Chinina asked Rafuna. Said Rafuna, well, it depends. Look, if it's not the custom in that neighborhood, in that area, for the woman to nurse a child, the mother to nurse her baby, then shominla, then you listen to her. Then the custom is to buy, to pay for a wet nurse. You got to pay for a wet nurse. But he archa orcha v'hulo arche. What if it's her custom, meaning she came from a community where the women nurse their babies, but he lives in a community where the women don't nurse their babies, right? Do you go after him or do you go after her, right? So again, she grew up in, I don't know, Westchester, where the women nurse their babies, and he lives in Riverdale, where they're very fancy and they hire wet nurses. And so the question is, which one do you follow? Batar dideyaz linan, do you go after her, or do batar didaz linan, or do you go after him or do you go after her? So that was the question he asked us. We answered him from this very famous, this is something everyone should remember, that a woman is ole imo ve'eno yoredet imo. A woman who gets married goes up to the standards of her husband, but doesn't go down to the standards of her husband. Meaning, if he has a higher social standard, and again, we're assuming that not nursing is a higher social standard because you can hire someone to nurse the baby, then she goes up to his level. But if she marries below her station, she doesn't go down to his level. And he basically has to take care of her in a way she's accustomed to. Amar Rav Huna Mikra, what's the source for this? It says about, what's her name? About the wife of Abraham, Sarah, Bihi Bu'ulat Baal, that she was a Bu'ulat Baal. What does that mean, Bu'ulat Baal? What is the word Bu'ulat? He Baal, she was married. But Ola means to go up. Valiyato Shabal, Lo Biridato Shabal. It's a cute reference to say that a woman only should go up with her husband, not down to his inferior customs. And Rebbe Elazar Amar Yahacha, it's even earlier. It says about Chava, we're going to read in a couple of weeks, Ki Haida Ein Kol Chai, right? She was the mother of Kol Chai, right? Meaning, L'chaim Nitzna, V'lo L'tzar Nitzna. She was given to her husband to live, not to be suffer, not to go down. So if the standard in her house is not to nurse, and she goes and marries someone who does nurse, you cannot demand of her that she does that. It's not what she's used to. Okay, continues the Mishnah. Again, all this assumes you have money, because if you can't afford it, obviously you can't afford it. Continued the Mishnah, if she has a responsibility to do all these things for her husband, if she brings in a shifcha, we said she's absolved of a couple of them. Shifcha, she no longer has to grind the wheat, she no longer has to be ofet, she doesn't have to wash the clothing, but she has to do everything else. Ask the Gemara, Hashara Avda, she has to do the rest. But Taimale, why can't she say to her husband, I don't get it. I brought you a wife in my place, right? Meaning, why I should be totally free now. I brought you a replacement wife called a shifcha. Let her do all the responsibilities I was supposed to do, and let me be, sit in my lazy boy, as we talked about yesterday. Says the Gemara, well, because, of course, what the husband will point out is that when it was her and him, she did the work for two people. But when you have a shifcha, now there's three people in the house, right? So by bringing in another person to help, you bring in more work, right? Because there's someone else who eats and someone else who cleans and has clothing, etc. So Mishum Dalmarla, because the husband can say to her, right? She can work, this shifcha can work for me and for herself. But who's going to do work for you? Who's going to do what you need? Okay, so that's why she needs to still do stuff. If she brings in shtayim, she brings in two shvachot, then we said more things she doesn't have to do. She doesn't have to be mavashelet, she doesn't have to cook anymore, she doesn't have to nurse the kid, but she still has to do the other stuff, right? She still has to work with the wool and make the bed. Hashara avde, the why can't she say, I don't get it, I don't need her? Each shifcha does work for two people, right? If I was a wife, I'd be working for myself and my husband. I bring in a shifcha, she works for two, but I'm left behind. But now if I bring in two shvachot, there are four of us in the house, and two people to do the work, let each one do the work for two people, and I can watch, TV all day. I don't understand why I need to do anything. So why doesn't she say, I brought in another woman one who does work for you and for her, and one for me and for her. Right? So why do I need to do anything? Says the husband, of course, this is obviously a very, very true and well-known thing, which is that the more you have, the more you need to do, right? So the bigger the house gets, the more complicated, the more bedrooms, the more people, the more servants, the more people end up showing up in the house. Says the Gemara, Mishum Da'amarla, the husband can say to her, what about Kami Orche or Parchi? What about the people who come and go, the guests and the travelers, Mantarach, right? Because again, as you build, as you buy, as everyone knows, you get yourself a 12-bedroom house, and all of a sudden it takes a lot more effort than if you just have 2 bedrooms, right? So, okay, that was why you need her to still work. What about shalosh? So we said if you have 3, then she no longer has to be matzata mita. She no longer has to make the bed. But again, the rest she has to do. Ashara avdi. Why doesn't she say to him, I brought you another servant to work for the guests. Because he'll say to her what I just said. The bigger your household becomes, everyone who watched Downton Abbey can relate to this, right? The bigger your household becomes, the bigger your guests and your responsibility and all the work that needs to be done. Says the Gemara, okay, well, now let's take that to the logical conclusion. There should be no end, right? The more servants you have, the more work you have. Tafilo arba nami, let's say you have 4 maid servants, right? 4 shvachot. Why do you say, well, there's even more people? That's where, well, at a certain point, you have a well-oiled machine. Arba, once you have 4, kevan denefishilu, since there are so many extra people above what they're needed, then misayana adadi, they help each other. So at a certain point, you're just working to keep up. But when you get above a certain point, you can start actually managing things and planning things. And then once you hit 4, that's the magic number. You can run a house perfectly. So try it out at home. You just need 4 servants, and everything will be smooth. Now, says Rav Chana, let me just point out to you, when we say she brings in servants, it doesn't mean she actually has to come into the marriage with the servants. It means if she is ra'oi for them, even if she didn't bring them in. Now, Rashi says that what ra'oi lachnis means is that she brings in a lot of money, right? So she brings in an indunya of, $100,000. Well, I don't know how much servants cost, but $100,000. It's enough to hire help, right? So it doesn't mean Ro'oi. Tosis is not so clear, or others maybe it means that she is not Tosis here, but the others that maybe she's sorry, that she is sort of the station that she's Ro'oi to have this. It's not just that she brings in the money. But either way, it doesn't literally mean that she brings them in. It means that she deserves to have them because maybe her dowry. Tana, in fact, the Braita says that in fact, it doesn't matter where she gets the money from. It could be that she brings it into the marriage, or it could be that she earns her money, right? Let's say she saves up all her money. She's really sick and tired of doing the laundry. So she saves up all her money to buy a washing machine, right? And so in that case, she would be putter. It doesn't matter that she didn't come into the marriage with. Continues the Gemara Arba'ah. If you have four maidservants, then where are we? Up here near the end of the narrow lines. If you have four, Yoshevet Bekatedra, she can sit back in her lazy boy. Amar Vitzek Bar Chananya Amar Ravuna, Afal Bisha Amar Yoshevet Bekatedra. Now, even though they say she has no responsibilities because she has so many people working for her, Ava Mozeget Lokos, she still has to serve her husband and pour his cup. So remember, mosaic doesn't mean pour, it means to dilute, right? So they used to have essentially undrinkable wine preserves, and they would have to dilute it into water to make it drinkable. And so that's considered to be a very, intimate thing. It's like pouring a drink, right, for him. And so she still has to do that as part of, not because it's the work, it's not because they need someone to do it, it's because it's something that's endearing that she's supposed to do for her husband. And she has to spread out the bed. And Rashi points out that this is not the same bed as before, where you have to set up the bed by dragging in the mattress and building it up. Here it just means putting out the bedspread, to make it look nice. But again, it's obviously a very suggestive and intimate thing. And she still has to wash his face, hands, and feet for him. So these are things that are not something that a wife can, in this case, can get out of doing. In fact, now that we're on this topic, these intimate tasks that a woman does for her husband, not intimate tasks, all the tasks that a woman does for her husband, Anida can do for her husband, even though Anida cannot sleep with her husband. But you shouldn't do these last acts that are very intimate. She shouldn't give him, dilute his cup for him and give him to drink. Hatzat mita, she shouldn't put out the bed in front of him. We'll see in front of him in a second. And she shouldn't wash her chatzat panav yadav raglav. However, says Rava, Hatzat Hamita, Amar Rava, Lo Amrin Ela B'fanav. It doesn't mean that she can't make his bed. It means that she can't do it while he's there, because the act of her doing it in front of him is suggestive and will maybe lead him to want to sleep with her, which is prohibited when she's a nida. And so therefore, she can't do it while he's there, but she can do it for him when he's not home. Avashalo B'fanav, Letlan there's no problem. And Mizigata Kos, when we talked about her not, giving him his cup, it doesn't mean she can't do it at all. Again, it means she can't do it in a customary way where it would lead to intimacy. But Shmuel, in Shmuel's house, his wife would give him the cup in her left hand. So I'm not sure why that made such a big difference, except that you might pour the whole thing out if you use the wrong hand. But that doesn't seem like the point. But it was enough of a hecker, enough of a distinction that it wouldn't lead to their normal intimacy that comes from that. And Abaya, in Abaya's house, his wife would be Manchalei Apuma de Kuva. She would put the cup down on top of the barrel, meaning not on the table, I guess, or not in his hand. And Rava Abesadia, Rava's wife would put it on next to the pillow, the mat they would sleep next to, eat next to, sorry. And Rav Papa would put it, Sharshifa, she would put it on the stool, on the bench that they sat next to. So anyways, these are all things done with the shinoi, and this is in fact how we generally paskin. Continues, fine. Now, we're about to get into a little bit of a tangent. Not that this wasn't a tangent, but sorry. And into the question of, I guess we're doing this because we just discussed what you're supposed to eat while you're pregnant. So the Gemara and Rav Yitzchak Bar Chananya, the name of Rafuna, has a very important challenge. Of course, the previous statement we just said was also Rav Yitzchak Bar Chananya and Rafuna. So I guess that's the main reason we're bringing it. All these things came from the same person. But he dealt with a very, very common problem. I don't know if anyone here has worked in food service, but I haven't that much. But the problem being that that if you're serving other people really good food and you're starving, it's very challenging, right? And it's very inhumane, I would say, in some ways, right? You have this great food that people really don't have. And the question is, what's the responsibility and what's normal? What's a nice thing to do for the person serving you food, for the shamash, for the waiter? So says Rab Yitzchak Bar Chananya, Amar Ravuna, Hakol mashin. You can withhold any food from the shamash, right? Chutz mi basar v'yayin, meaning the shamash would eat when you're done, right? Obviously, you eat the meal, and then this person they get their own food, or they eat leftovers. But you can only do that for regular food. If it's basar v'yayin, you can't hold it back from them because they get so enticed by it that they're going to want to eat during the meal. So you have to allow your shamash to drink some wine, I'm not sure how good they'll be, and to eat some basar even during the meal. And says Rav Chisda, that's basar shamein v'yayin yashan. That doesn't mean all meat, right? If it's hot dogs, you don't have to worry about it. But if it's nice, fatty meat and a good old wine, you have to share it. Amar Rava, what does that mean? Basar shamein kol hashana kula. It means it's sat around all year round. I don't know what that means exactly. It's sat around. I guess the animal lives the whole year round. And yain yashen b'tkufat tamuz. It means wine that's in the summer, because in the summer the wine gets very hot, and I guess it becomes very desirable. So that's an important rule of Yitzchak Bar Chananya, name of Rav Huna. Now we got some stories. I don't know if everyone's got the place where like the third wide line. Last word. Amar Rav Anam Bar Tachlifa. Says Rav Anam Bar Tachlifa, Havi Ka'imna Kamei Marshmo. We were once in front of Marshmo. Marshmo was a very senior and wealthy person. And Aitile Tavshila da Arde. They brought him this meal of arde. Rashi's arde are mushrooms. So this was a real incredible. Could you have a different translation there? No. So they brought him this meal of ardi. Rashi's here. Kimihinu patriot, which we translate as mushrooms, some kind of of treat. So they brought Shmuel this incredible meal. The lav the if he hadn't given us a little bit of it, it's takni. We would have been in danger. Meaning, we were such a desire to have this, that our whole systems, our whole intestinal system, our whole brain, our whole desire would have made us in physical danger because it was so attractive. It was so good. Says Rav Ashi, Rav Kahana. I was once in front of Rav Kahana. They brought him gardile. They brought him sliced lifta as a turnip, right? A lefta to turnip in challah, in vinegar, and it was just to die for. Ilav the yavla istak kani. If he hadn't given us some, our lives would have been in danger. And this is conceivable. You have something. You have such a desire for something. This sounds very turnips in vinegar. Sounds really delicious. But so he had to give it to us. Rav Papa said, even these dates that are so have a good smell, they can cause someone to want to eat them. And klala de milta, in fact, the rule is called itle rechav itle kiyuha. The things that are really desirous are things that smell good, and they also have kiyuha. I'm not really sure what kiyuha means exactly. We usually translate it as like a bite, like they're sharp, right? But I don't know. Do you have a translation for kiyuha
there? Pungency of taste.
Okay. So anyways, it's referring to not regular food, but like things that smell really good. They have a real pointed taste. Anyways, for these things, if you serve them in front of someone else, you have to share. It's just not fair to someone to deprive them of it when they can smell it and see it. Now, Avua bar Ihi and Binyamin bar Ihi, these two brothers, right? Avua and Binyamin, the sons of Ihi, Chad safi mikol mina amina. One used to give his waiter a little piece of every single dish, right? So every single thing that came out, they gave a little bit aside for the person serving it. And Chad safi michad mina, one would, they'd choose one thing, they'd give the main course or whatever, but they would not share every single thing. But Mar, the one who gave everything to the waiter, Mishtai Elio Badei. Elio used to come visit him. Umar lo Mishtai Elio Badei, his brother, we don't know which one, his brother did not merit Elio because Elio is very much in support of you being generous and kind to your workers. That's the party line for Labor Day. Okay. Continues the Gemara at the bottom. Hani tarti chasidim. there were
That was
two.
special for Labor Day.
Sorry,
That was a special quote for Labor Day.
that's what I said. Leo clearly is very supportive of labor. I don't actually know what Labor Day is, but I assume it has something to do with respecting labor. But maybe just the end of the summer. I don't know. Anyways, continues the Gemara. Hani Tarti Chasidim. There were two Chasidim. Va'amrila. Some people say that we knew who they were. They weren't just random Chasidim. Rav Murray, Rav Pinchas, Bnei Rav Chisda. They were the two sons of Rav Chisda named Rav Murray and Rav Pinchas. And Mar Kadam Safi, Umar Ma'achar Safi. One would give food to their help before they ate. They would put aside food even before the meal and give it to the people working. And one would be after the meal. What was left over, they would give. The Kadam Safi, the one who gave food before the meal, Elio Mishtai Ba'adei. Elio used to come to him, and the one who didn't only gave the food after the meal, the Ma'achar Safi, that one, Lo Mishtai Elio Ba'adei, he did not merit Elio to come. Again, the same idea. And furthermore, continues the Gemara, another story, not as exciting, but this story is, well, it's an exciting story, but not the same idea. Ameimar Umar Zutra Ravashi. This was a story with these three rabbis, Ameimar, Mar Zutra, and Ravashi. They were sitting in the chamber of the entrance of the house of King Izgur. I don't know who Izgur Malka was, but it sounds very Persian, right? She says he's Shem Melech Paras. So some Persian king Izgur. So they were, I guess they were something, they had some connection, and they were sitting there. Chalaf the Aza Aturagna Demalka, the butler of the king, the helper, walked by with the food. Chazia Ravashi the Marzutra, the Chaver Ape. So Ravashi saw the Marzutra was just, what's it called? Like you're salivating, right? He was just, Rashi, Chavar, the top of Samachal from the bed, Chavar means white, right? His face turned white. But he saw basically that he was losing it. He couldn't stop from desiring this amazing food coming by. So therefore, what did Ravashi do? Any good friend would do. Shaka be'etzba'ate, so he stuck his finger in, and anachle bebume, and he put it in Marzutra's mouth. So he saw Marzutra his life was in danger. He couldn't control himself. It was so good looking, he had to take some. Now the king was not pleased about this, right? Amrulay, so they said to him, Afsadat al-Sudat Damalka. You made the king's meal be ruined. The king's not going to eat this now. You stuck your hand in it, in the middle of his chicken salad. So Amrulay, so they said to him, Amaite Avid Hachi. So they said to Rav Sheshis Rav Ashi, why did you do this, right? And obviously they were going to get him in trouble. Amrulay said, no. Man David Hachi Pasil Machal Demalka. The one who makes such bad things, one who does this kind of cooking, should not be allowed to cook for the king. Meaning the food was bad. Amrulay said, what are you talking about? Amai, what was bad about it? Amrulay said, look, Davar Acher Chazaybe. I saw something else there. Davar Acher usually means pig. We usually translate as pork, but here we'll see from the Gemara in context. It means that there was something sick. I saw like a bad piece of meat inside of the dish, right? So Rashi combines them both. Rashi says it was basar chazir that was mitzorat. It was clearly a defective piece of meat that I saw in the dish. So they said, you know what? Let's check and see. And they checked the dish, and they couldn't find any of this bad meat that Ravashi claimed was there. So they're about to take, Ravashi into trouble. And so Shakal Etzbate, but Ravashi had some magic in him, and he took his finger and he put it on the food. Anachale, I'm like, no, what about this piece? Hachami Bad Kitu, did you check this one? Badku Ashkon, they checked that piece, and in fact, that piece was sick. Rashi again says it was leprosy, but I don't know exactly what that means in an animal, but it was a miracle that, basically he had done this in order to help his friend, but in order to save his own life, he turned the meat into rotten meat so that they would say it was a bad meal, which is what he was claiming. Asked the Gemara, Amalei Rabbanan, the Rabbanan said, well, one second. My time is Samachta Nisa. How in the world did you do this? Right? It's a very dangerous thing to go to the king's house, put your finger in the food because your friend needs to eat something. And you're going to rely on a miracle that you're going to turn it into diseased meat, right? Why did you rely on this nace? Amalei said, you didn't have a choice. Chazai ruach tzrat the kapar chalai. I saw there was this spirit of tzara'at, of illness that was about to affect my friend. And so therefore I had to do this in order to save Mar Ukva. So it was really that serious that he desperately needed the food. And the moral of the story is don't sit near the kitchen, right? I mean, if you're just in the wrong place, or you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Continues the Gemara now back to more practical things. This is really not as practical. Ahu Roma, there was a Roman. He said to a woman, Minasvatli, will you be marrying me? Would you like to get married? And she said, no. Amalei lo, right? She rejected him. So he went, Azal Aite Rumande, again, this is a little bit of a play on the Roma, right? The Roman brought pomegranates, he brought Rumani, Rimonim, Pale, and he peeled them, he started eating them in front of her. Wow, right? So this was all of a sudden, he's like, you're not going to marry me, I'll tease you, right? So this was a very, I guess, tempting thing. So he ate them in front of her. He didn't give her any of them. Kol Maya de Tsarila, whenever her saliva came up, the mayim in her mouth, and it pained her because she was so salivating over it, balapte, and so she would have to just swallow her saliva, but she kept getting sicker and sicker. Below havla ad zagla, he did not give her any pomegranates until she became sick, right? So she started getting ill. I don't know exactly what illness, but she became ill. So finally, after a long time, he said to her, okay, now will you marry me? If I cure you, if I make you feel better, will you marry me now? I'm really in. She said yes. Sounds like a very happy marriage, right? I'm in. Also, I did Romani. So in the end, he got more pomegranates. And Pali he kept peeling them and eating them in front of her without giving her yet. He said to her, look, all of the saliva that causes you pain, instead of swallowing it, tuf shadai, spit it out, get rid of it. And she did that. And so he ate in front of her. She had all the salivation, all this pain, but she spit it out instead of swallowing it. Adenafka mina kihutza yarka, until it came out of her like a green like petal or something, like a leaf.
Leaf,
right?
palm leaf.
Yeah, which came out of her. She threw up something or she coughed up something, and she was cured. What this means, I have no idea. But like what medical conception here? I mean, you could see why mentally people would want it. But we've had this Hutz of the Yarka. When we talked about Esther, the Esther had a Hutz of the Yarka. Anyways, so there are who knows what it is, but there was some. I mean, obviously, green is an important health color. There is bile and things like that. But what exactly this means, I cannot tell you. But it seems like I don't. We shouldn't tell the kids about this trick, otherwise, force people to marry them. Continue the Mishnah. Back to a little bit on topic now. The first two dots, like 20 lines down or so. Not the first one, the second one. Oseb b'tzemer. We said that a wife has to work with wool, right? She has to spin wool, make wool into thread. Says well, that's very specific about semer in b'pishtim lo. Implies she doesn't have to do it from flax, right? Flax, semer, of course, enough I know is that it comes from an animal. Pishtim comes from the ground. You take the flax, you have to also spin it into seed. So she doesn't have to do into thread. Sorry, she doesn't have to do that. Matzid the money. That's Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya, because Rabbi Yehuda says, "Eno kofel lo la'amod lifnei aviv." A husband cannot make his wife serve his father. Sorry, meaning she has to serve him and give him food and stuff. So she does not have to do that for his father. And lo la'amod lifnei beno, not his son, assuming it's not her son. Even if it's her son, she doesn't have to. She doesn't have to give straw in front of his animals. That's considered to be, beneath her level. But she does have to give straw in front of the bakar. So Rashi sort of differentiates between bamto means like the horses, right, and chamarim, and the bakar is the cows, which are less wild, I guess. So putting tevin in front of Rashi is a whole different shot, which we'll skip. But putting tevin in front of a horse and a donkey is like, I guess she could get kicked or hurt. And so, but putting in front of a cow, they're much more gentle species. So she has to do that. Rabbi Yehuda says, and this is what we're quoting it for, a husband cannot force his wife to work with flax because Pishtan masriach et hapeh, makes your mouth stink. I guess they would lick on it right when they did this. Umisharbet et hasfatayim, and it causes the lips to crack or to break, and so it causes a lot of discomfort. And hanimili, but that's only true about kitna romah. That's the Roman flax, right? I guess there were other kinds of flax that were much more gentle, but Roman flax, a woman cannot be forced to work with because it's very painful and damaging. Finally, Rabbi Eliezer said, even if she has 100 servants, she can't stop doing her jobs because sitting around will lead her to znut, right, to zina. Amar of Malchio, Sefer Malchio, Amar Vada Ra'ava, Halacha Rabbi Eliezer. That's how we pass. Now, we do this every time we say Malchio and Malchia, because there were two rabbis. One was Malchio, and one was Malchia, or Malchia. It says Rav Chanina, Breder Avika, in 3 halachot, you should quote it as Rav Malchio. Shapud, Shvachot, and Gumot. These are 3 halachot. Shapud refers to a spit that you would use on Yom Tif, and whether it's muksa. Shvachot is the one we just quoted, that whether it's shifta, or whether a wife who brings in 100 shvachot has to still work for her husband, which he says she does. And Gumot refers to whether you have maturity when you see hairs, basically, in a woman or a man who's reaching puberty. So those are of Rav Malchio. And Blurit, the 3 halachot of Blurit, which refers to how they used to cut their hair in a certain way, that was for Avodah Zarah. Efer Mikleh, which is a kind of ashes that you would be allowed to put or not put on a wound because it darkens the skin. And Gvina, and the question of eating cheese, that is Gvinat Akum. That's not from a Yisrael, because there might be pig mixed into it. Those are all Rav Malchia. So that's those, you should remember that. Rav Papa said, listen, it's really hard to remember that, but remember that matznitinu matznita, what's written in a Braita or in a Mishnah is all Rav Malchia, right? The Aleph is the Aleph. But Shemaitita, if it's written in a just a statement, then it's Rav Malchio. And how are you going to remember that? Simanach matznita malkita. The Mishnah is queen. Mishnah it rules, right? And so the Malchia, which is like a melech, rules, not Rav Malchio. My now, what's the difference? There's one exception, which is Ikmenau Shvachot. The exception is our Mishnah, which refers to Shvachot, which, if you go according to this rule, right, all the Mishnayot should be Rav Malchia with an Aleph. So earlier we quoted this halacha from Rav Malchio, and therefore there would be a machloket about who is the proper person quoting our Mishnah. Now, finally, the last thing before the new Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said, 1 second, even if a woman brings in 100 servants, she has to work because, so Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said a different reason. He said because batala is niviyah lidei shimum, leads her to go out of her mind, right? So the first reason was because it's going to lead her to hang out inappropriately and lead to znut. The second one is that she's going to go insane. What's the difference? My benayo, Hainatanakama, sorry. Ikemenayo, the mitalala biguraita. What if she's got a hobby, right? What if she plays with the dogs? That's what Rashi says. I mean, that's what the Gemara says. But or kitanata v'nashdir. If she plays around with a game. Sorry, I got it wrong. The mitala biguraita ketinata. She plays around with small dogs, or nad rishir. She plays with this game of nad rishir. I don't know if you know
it says here.
Chess?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know I can't imagine that they really knew what chess was, but let's say, okay, I'll give you that. So anyway, the point is she spends her time playing mahjong, right? Or some other game that occupies her. So in that case, she won't go insane, right? She's doing the crossword puzzles, but it's certainly not going to help her from not hanging out with other people, right? She's got a lot of free time on her hands. So one is the problem that if you have free time on your hands, you get up into trouble. And the other is that if you have nothing to stimulate you, you go crazy, right? So if you had something to stimulate you, but it wasn't something constructive or hard, you still worry that she's going to lead to Zima. Okay. Anyways, that's the end of that Mishnah. Let's continue with the next Mishnah, which is the next responsibility. Of course, we knew we were getting to this, which is that essentially, obviously, one of maybe the fundamental responsibility of a marriage is for them to sleep with each other, right? For a man and a wife to sleep with each other. So what if there's a problem or one party does not want to do that? Says the Mishnah, Let's say, let's start with the man. We're going to get to the wife soon. Let's say the husband is madira tishtomi tashmish hamita. The husband says to his wife, I will not sleep with you. I make a neder. I'm not going to have any intercourse with you. I'm not going to sleep with you. So he's denying her basically a basic right and responsibility of marriage. Says Beit Shammai, if it's 2 Shabbatot, that's it. He can do it up to 2 weeks. Beyond 2 weeks, they've got to get divorced, or he's got to annul the neder. Beit Hillel says Shabbat achat, only one Shabbat, meaning even one Shabbat apart is too much. So or more than one Shabbat. So he can do it one Shabbat, but not more than that. Continues the Mishnah, Yotzin the Talmud Torah. If a husband decides he wants to go to learn, right? There's a tremendous yeshiva in 2 towns over. He decides he wants to leave home to go. His wife says, I don't want you to leave home. You have a responsibility to be with me. Says the Mishnah, he's allowed to leave shelo bereshut shloshim yom. He's allowed to go, we'll see in the Gemara what this means, but he's allowed to go without permission from his wife for 30 days. So now the Gemara is going to talk about, this is where he was known to be a Talmid Chacham, right? It's not where she married a guy and then he said, I'm going to go to a yoga retreat now for 2 years, kind of thing, right? That would not be allowed. So that's what the Mishnah says, 30 days. Hapoalim, now a person who is a day laborer, right, the mason or whatever, Shabbat achat, right? They can go away for up to 1 week if they get a really good job. They said, I was offered this great opportunity, and somewhere they can go away for 1 week. Hatalmidim yotzim Talmud Torah. Sorry, I skipped the word. Sorry, it should say Talmidim are yotzim Talmud Torah, right? That's the only Talmidim, not regular people. Poalim are Shabbat achat. Ha'oneha amura Torah. What is the Torah says, right, that a husband is responsible to sleep with his wife at some frequency. What is the frequency? So it depends on the kind of person, like what his job is and what his availability is. And tayalin, if a person is a tayal, then it has to be even every day, right? Tayalin are people who just sort of carry things around, but they don't go anywhere. So they're home, they're available. So that a tayalin is every, or sorry, that's not tayal means that they wander around. So they don't really have a job. They, they're free time, work in an office. So then b'chol yom, then they should do it. They have a responsibility every day. A person who's poalim, a person who is a laborer, shtayim b'shabbat, twice a week. Achamarim, someone who drives a car, right? That means a donkey, but a person who drives a car or a bus, they travel. So then achat b'shabbat, they spend a lot of nights away from home, presumably. So at least once a week, they're always home for Shabbat. Hagamalim, but if you drive a donkey, right, a camel, that's obviously a much longer journey. And so then it's expected that you're going to go away for a longer period of time, and it can be even achat l'shloshim yom, even once every 30 days. Hasapanim, if you're a captain in a boat or a sailor, then achat l'shisha chadashim, you go away. It's expected that you're going to go away for these very, very long journeys. Divrei Reb Eliezer. This is all, says our Mishnah, the opinion of Reb Eliezer, which is not a common way for us to end the Mishnah, right? But Divrei Reb Eliezer. It says the Gemara, 1 second. Let's deal with the first thing first. Beit Shammai said a husband can make a neder that he's not going to sleep with his wife for 2 weeks. Beit Hillel said 1 week. My time at the Beit Shammai, why does Beit Shammai allow a husband to stay away from his wife for 2 weeks? It says Beit Shammai, right? A woman who gives birth to a female child, the Torah says she has yemei tumah, where she can't be with her husband for 2 weeks. So the Torah allows a precedent for 2 weeks. Now, you could say that's an unusual precedent, but that at least you see that there is a time when the Torah will prohibit a husband and a wife from being together for 2 weeks. Beit Hillel says, well, what about a zachar, right? The Torah, you see when it's a male child, only is 1 week.
1 week.
Obviously, you see the flaw here, right? They tell him, what, why would you say it from a male child? Why not from a female child? Says Gemara, you're right. It's a mistake. You're right. If the source of how much time they could be apart was from childbirth, 100%, it would be, you'd have to look at the Nikeva and say 2 weeks. He derived it from Nida, right? A Nida is prohibited to her husband, but she's prohibited for 7 days. And so because of that, that's the model for the amount of time that we would require or allow a man to be separated and not sleep with his wife. This is where my commitment would be. So what's the basis for the argument of Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel? Because Mar Savar, Beit Hillel holds, look, midi de shchiach, midi de shchiach. Let's look at something that's common. It's common for men to go away and not sleep with their wives for some period of time. Rashi says it's common for them to get angry and say, I'm not sleeping with you for a week or whatever. But and nida, of course, happens every month. It's a very common thing. But so that's therefore it's comparable. And Shammai would say, you look at what he causes. Childbirth is caused, interesting formulation, by the husband, because you can't become pregnant without the husband, right? Or that contribution. And so the same thing is true about him making a neder. But nida has nothing to do with him. He has no control over her becoming a nida, right? So midi, marsaver midi dehu garamla, midi dehu garamla, it's something that he causes from something else that he causes. Amarav, now as Rav said, let me just be clear here. Machloket b'mifaresh. The machloket about whether a husband who makes a neder not to sleep with his wife for 1 week or 2 weeks, whether he has to divorce her, which one, is only if he speaks out. I swear I'm not going to sleep with you for 1 week or 2 weeks. But if he says it's stam, if he just leaves it open-ended, everybody agrees. He has to divorce her immediately and give her a ketubah, because that's unacceptable. It's cruel and it's not in concert with their marriage. You can't make an open-ended neder that he's never going to sleep with his wife. Shmuel says, no, it's not true. Afila b'stam nami, even if he leaves it open-ended, yamtin, they don't have to get divorced right away. They can wait, because sometimes you can absolve yourself of a neder, right? Shema yimsa petach l'nidro. You might find a petach. A petach is like an opening where he was really angry because something happened, and then he discovers later that it wasn't her fault or it wasn't what he thought it was. And so there are times where you will find a petach, an opening for the neder. Says, well, that's an interesting machloket. But we already know that Rav and Shmuel argue about that. We had the exact same argument in a different context. It's not. There's a Mishnah, very interesting Mishnah, which we're going to get to later in this Masechet, where it says, a man gets really angry at his wife and he makes a neder. I swear I'm not going to let you get any benefit from me. I'm not going to give you anything. Now, of course, that's illegal, right? Because the husband has to support her, right? It's his responsibility. Says the Mishnah, Ad shloshim yom, if it's up to 30 days, ya'amid parnes, you can assign someone else to feed her. Now, why you can and why he has to pay her back, we'll discuss later. It's a Mishnah later, okay? But we will, there's a way to get around this. You can assign a parnes to give her nourishment. But mikan, yoter mikan, if it's more than 30 days, yotzi v'yitein ketubah, he has to divorce her and give her a ketubah, because it's not tenable for them to stay married if she can't get anything from him. And that's where Rav said, 1 second, lo shanu el b'mifaresh, that's only if he speaks out. I will not give you anything for 30 days. Aval b'stam, if he just leaves it open-ended, then he's got to divorce her right away. Yotzi la'altar v'yitein ketubah. And Shmuel says, no, the same thing he just said here. Afilu b'stam nami, even if he leaves it open-ended, yamtin, they can wait 30 days while she gets nourishment from somewhere else, because shema yimtza petach l'nidro. Maybe he'll find an opening for his neder so that he can get rid of it and not have to divorce her. So why do we have to argue about both cases, about where he made a neder not to sleep with her, and where he made a neder not to give her food? In fact, you need to say it. Because if you talked about the case of food, there's a solution, right? He can hire, someone else can give her food. There's a parnes. But sorry, by sleeping with someone, you can't hire someone else to fulfill your marital responsibilities, right? So here, it's impossible to get someone else to do what you're supposed to do, which is sleep with your wife. But there, by food, maybe you can wait. You can wait 30 days. And if you only had told me the case of the nourishment, I would have thought that's where Shmuel says you can wait. That you can wait because you can give her food from some other source. But here, where there's no one else who's going to be able to fulfill her needs, Ema modile the Rav, you might think he agrees with the Rav, Tzricha, and therefore we argue about both cases because they disagree about what happens in an open-ended Shavuah. But everybody agrees that if more than 1 week or 2 weeks pass with the Shavuah, then the husband has to divorce his wife and give her a ketubah, because he's not allowed to stay married and not provide what he's supposed to provide. We will continue this discussion tomorrow. It's a very interesting discussion about the timing and the different behaviors. And I guess it'll be someone else tomorrow morning. Happy Labor Day, everyone. Shavuot Tov again.
Happy
See
Labor
you
Day.
next week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy the time with the apples.